we wanted to talk about it in three parts. So someone new to this, they could figure out why it was important and maybe think about whether they wanted to do this kind of work, how to get started, which will be the subject of the next webinar after this. And finally, what are the support systems? What are the resources available? How do you know whether you're doing this right? Which will be the third session. So we at Prajna, we don't really do very long intros, so I will close with that, but introduce Sapna Kedia, who's today's facilitator. Would you please turn your video on, Sapna? You've vanished from my screen. Yeah, there you are. Sapna Kedia works as a technical specialist at the International Center for Research on Women, Asia, and is a co-founder of the Women in Global Health India chapter, which seeks to achieve gender equality in global health leadership with a specific focus on India. At ICRW, Ms. Kedia's work focuses on conducting research, designing and implementing programs on sexual and reproductive health and rights for girls and women, how gender norms impact men and masculinities, and gender in public policy and governance. Sapna recently led ICRW's study on male involvement in premarital abortions in New Delhi. Ms. Kedia leads the implementation of the 3D program for women and girls in India, which aims to advance gender equality for girls and women by facilitating convergent action across the government, civil society, and the private sector. Sapna also supports the gender equity movement in schools, GEMS, for in schools for boys program in Rajasthan. Prior to joining ICRW, Sapna worked as a qualitative researcher in One World South Asia and studied innovative approaches to the improvement of public service delivery, as well as the promotion of social inclusion in India. Sapna also worked as a trainer on child sexual abuse with Rahi Foundation and consulted with the World Bank on its social inclusion and governance projects. Sapna holds a master's in political science from Jawaharlal University and a bachelor's in political science from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi University, India. Sapna, welcome to you, and over to you. You will introduce the others, and it's your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Swarna. Thank you, Prajna team and Project Race team for having me facilitate this very important session on engaging men and boys. And I'm so glad that I'm actually facilitating the first session on the rationale of engaging men and boys. It's a topic that has gradually grown closer to my heart. I have understood and I deeply value the work that we all do with men and boys. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to facilitate and be a part of this session. Welcome everybody to all the audience and to all our panelists. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself, to ask your questions, and we will try to take as many questions as we have. Uh, I'll just quickly introduce our panelists for today, and then we'll begin with our panel. It's an open-ended panel. We have some brief questions which we will put out to the panelists, and then we have 20 minutes towards the end of the panel to take your questions. So let me begin by welcoming Navneet Kumar, who's the director of Ibtida, an NGO working in the Mewat area of Rajasthan for 20 years. Navneet is involved with the operations and providing strategic inputs to the Ibtida team. They work mostly in areas of women empowerment, adolescent education, and empowerment and strengthening of government schools. Welcome, Navneet. I look forward to the discussion with you today.
Thank you, Sapna.
And
Thank you, Sapna and Isiatum for having me.
our next panelist is Anusha Bhardwaj, the Executive Director of Voice for Girls. Uh, um, Anusha leads Voice for Girls, a social enterprise that educates and empowers marginalized adolescent girls, and their focus is on eliminating gender inequality and violence. Voice for Girls over the years has impacted the lives of over 84,000 adolescents and 3,200 young camp counselors. Welcome, Anusha. I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Sapna and ICRW and ECF for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our final panelist for today is Rajiv Ranjan Sinha, who's the founder member of Srijan Foundation. Srijan is a Jharkhand based nonprofit NGO and works for women empowerment, gender justice, and child rights and protection of sustainable agriculture and livelihood promotion. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thanks, Sapna, and thanks to the ECF team for giving me the opportunity to be part of this webinar.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think we'll probably begin the conversation a little by just talking a little bit about um, the work that all of you do. I think, Navneet, is it okay if we begin with you?
Sure.
Yeah. So, Navneet, if you could tell us, all of us, a little about what IPTIDA does and the work that IPTIDA does around gender equality and particularly around the involvement of men and boys
Right.
and
Right.
some of your focus areas that you work on.
Right. Right. So Ibtida, it's an Urdu word, and it means beginning in Urdu. And we started in 1996-97 when our founding ED, Sri Rajesh Singh, he conducted a benchmark study for government of Rajasthan in the region. And the survey really highlighted the backwardness in the region, especially of women and children, and especially the girls' education and the status of women came out starkly in that survey. And this is how we started in 1997, to address these issues of girl child and women of this area. And we primarily work with Meo Muslim communities, rural castes, and in one block with rural tribes and other backward communities. And right from the start, our focus has been women and girl child. So cutting this long story short, we are working in 6 blocks, and we are present in over 450 villages. And currently we are working with around 45,000 women and children. And our work currently is kind of divided in 3 verticals, or 3 pillars, so to say. So the first pillar is women empowerment vertical. Under that we have SAG institutions. We have 3 SAGs, 4 SAG federations. We have federated around 1400 SAGs, and then 16,000 women are part of those SAGs, and these are federated into self-sustained, financially self-sustained federations. So we call it मंच. So हमारे पास 4 मंच हैं. We have 4 financially self-sustained federations. And the work that we are doing with these women related to financial inclusion, livelihood promotion, and a big component is access to rights and entitlement. So under that, we have selected some schemes, including NREGA and PDS, which forms a big part of that, and also strengthening panchayats. So this entire gamut of work comes under our women empowerment vertical. The second part is our girls' education and empowerment. We have started, as I said, we have started with girls' education right from our initial days. And once RTE came, so we used to set up something called Talim Shalas. So these were parallel learning support centers for the girl child. But once RTE came, we mainstreamed that intervention and we started working in government schools. And right now, we are present in 100 government schools, and we are working with 13,000 children. So this work has hugely got affected because of COVID, but now slowly we are we have started picking up that work. And the third part is our work with adolescent girls, and under that we set up something called girls resource centers. So these are typical safe spaces for girls in the villages itself, and there we deliver life skills module with them. We also provide computer education, and we mentor some of the change leaders. And so these are the work that we have been doing prior to the work that we started with with the support of APPI and ECF. We have started our work with boys and men also. So this is how currently our work is structured.
How old is your work with men and boys, Navneet? Like, for how long has IPTIDA been working with men and boys?
Very recent, very recent. We just 7 months back we started working with boys, and the response has been really encouraging.
So, what is the kind of work that you do with men and boys?
So primarily our work is focused on boys only as of now, and we come in contact with men through the work that we are doing with the communities. So with boys, we set up something called Boys Club in the villages, right? And apart from other things, we also have our various structured module that ECF uses with the boys that they are working. So we are also using the same curriculum. So this is how we kind of connect with boys. Under that, we have different modules, different sessions that we conduct with them, including related to human rights, gender, and other things.
And these are boys of what age group, and they are from which communities?
So they are from the same communities that we have been working with, primarily SC and SC, OBC, and Meo Muslim communities. And these boys are like 14 plus age, and between 13 to 18 it varies.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Navneet. And we'll come back to you and talk a little bit more about why Ibtida decided to work with men and boys. I'd now like to go to Anusha and
Sure.
talk to a little bit about Voice for Girls and the work that Voice for Girls does and how they started working on men and boys.
Thanks, Sapna. So Voice for Girls is based in Hyderabad, but we work extensively in Telangana. In the past, we worked in Andhra, we worked in Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand. We've taken our programs to Tamil Nadu. So in our context, we are very focused on working with adolescent girls. We started off because when we were doing spoken English camps way back in 2011, that's 10 years ago, we realized that girls were not coming back after the summer break. Okay, so between 7th and 8th grade, they would just disappear. They never come back, and that's when we said, okay, we can't just be looking at spoken English because these girls are dropping out because they're getting their first period. And that really is a game changer for that girl's life. So how do we give her information and skills so she's able to stay in school and at least finish up to say high school, right? So we started off in I'm sorry, I'm not streaming anything here.
No, that's
okay. Okay, sorry. I thought I did something and something started here. Okay.
I was looking for you in that picture actually, Anusha. I thought that you were, kind of visiting
Yeah, we did visit Ibtada and there is conversation to see how we can work together. But zooming back in 2011 when we started work, it was really to see how we can give information to the adolescent girl, because adolescence is such a critical age that suddenly girls who were having relative freedom outside the house, be able to go to school, suddenly their life changes, and it's not just a physical and an emotional sort of change, but a lot around cultural and social expectations from the girl to start doing household chores, get ready to get married, drop out of school. So we said, okay, let's give her information so she is able to negotiate to stay in school. So that's really where our work started. And having started work here, we slowly started adding more components. So now we have a rounded program where we're looking at health, safety, rights, and future planning. So giving the girl all of these sort of information that will help her plan her future and also give her really important and relevant life skills like negotiation and conflict resolution and decision making. I mean, I do believe that, as an adolescent girl, I wish I had this information early on, when I was negotiating that critical age in my life. So over the years, we've also learned that, girls want a safe space to be able to discuss all of these things. And the way we create the safe space is by bringing in college students who come as interns to our program. So that has really been a really positive impact, because these college students really act as these role models. So this Didi or Akka who comes into the classroom is able to break away from the judgments that they normally hear from older people, whether it's their adults in their community or the teachers in school, to say you're a good girl, you're a bad girl, if you do this, you're a good girl, if you do this, you're a bad girl. But they're able to give that information which is not based on any judgments. And because it's so activity based, we are having so many role plays and a discovery method of learning. So girls are able to contextualize this information within her life and able to come up with solutions herself. Because at the end of the camp, at the end of the 30-day intervention that she does with us over a period of a year, she becomes a peer leader. So she's taking this information, going out into the community to spread this information to others who cannot come to a voice camp. So in that sense, it sort of is widening the circle of solidarity as we go along. And we've also seen that college students who intern with us, though they come from the best colleges in India, whether it's Delhi or Lucknow or Hyderabad, even that girl who comes from an educated family is so devoid of information. Though she knows that, okay, I have my period, this is how I use a sanitary napkin, she doesn't know why she's getting a period, what are these expectations, how should she manage all of these emotions, or in terms of really sexual or reproductive health. I think sex education in our country itself is quite quite a joke, right? So I think we are able to have multiplier effect on the young women who intern with us, with the young girls who they go ahead and teach. And now these girls are going into the community and doing sessions for the mothers, doing sessions for younger adolescents. So it's a multiplier effect to go forward from there. So that is in a nutshell what we do.
Yeah. So Anusha, if I was to ask you, how did you then start working with boys? Because a lot of your work has been about on adolescent girls and empowering them and providing them with information. So how did you start working with boys? And what work do you do with boys?
That's a great question, Sapna. Can I also share my screen, because I made a presentation.
Please,
and
please, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's been disabled, so I need access.
Can I request Antika to please help with sharing Anusha's screen?
Yes.
But to sort of start the conversation, 4 or 5 years ago, actually, we wanted to, expand our work, and we were thinking, how do we go about it, right? Should we go deeper into like doing more programs with the girls? That's when from the fringes, really, we started hearing this, no, you need to start working with the boys. You need to start working with the boys. So we ignored it for quite some time, I must say, because I think having that confidence to work with the girls, because it's a lot around empowerment and, hey, you know what, we need to do this program, and you can see the girls just come up with the energy. So 4 years or 5 years ago, actually, when we we had a successful girls program, we said, okay, we know it all, and I think we have it fixed. Let's not, spoil it and start working with the boys, because we don't know how to have a conversation with the boys. I think that's really where we started from. But so when we did some pilot, we said, okay, let's at least go and listen to the boys and know what we did. I remember doing a pilot, and I was in the classroom when that happened, where we asked, I asked this question whenever I go into a girls' classroom, what would you do if someone is following you? And the girls in the classroom would always tell me that if somebody is following them, that means they are unsafe. They should go, they should run, they should tell, they should scream for help. And when we piloted, of course, things around violence with the boys, I remember this boy, Sai, who got up and said, okay, before I answer this question, I want to know, when you say, what would you do? Am I a boy or a girl? So suddenly, the one answer was now split into two answers. So this boy said, I can give you two scenarios. And then he said that, you're saying someone is following me. Who's following me? Is it a boy or a girl? Okay, so this one question suddenly had 4 possible scenarios. And I said, okay, go ahead and explain all these 4 scenarios to me. So he said, if he's a girl and he's been followed by a boy, then it's a standard response, right? That he has to go away from there, find help. She has to go and ask for support. That means she's unsafe. But if she's a girl and she's being followed by a girl, it's because maybe the girl who's following her is wants to become friends with her, because she's very shy and she doesn't know how to make friends. Okay, and if he's a boy being followed by a girl, he will turn back and say, I come from a decent family, okay, don't follow me. And if he's a boy followed by a boy, that means there is a fight, he's coming for some revenge, so he has to run away. So that's when really, Sai Kumar gave me that the world is so black and white for this boy. The gender roles are so, split, and really the importance of having to speak to the boys sort of like was staring at our face that, really, I mean, we can't just say we are happy working with the girls and let's just do that, because the girls are going into the environment where the boys are thinking like this, right? So that's when truly we said, okay, the road to the future is when we start working with the boys, and we must start having a conversation with the boys. And okay, I think I mean, just to sort of like give you a brief understanding of how we started working with the boys. So that was the story. And
Thank you. Thank
since
you
4 years,
so
we've
much.
been working with boys.
4 years. And what age
Yeah.
group are these boys?
Again, adolescent age group. So 8th,
Adolescents.
9th, and 10th grades.
Thank you so much, Anusha, for sharing that in very interesting anecdote by Sai Kumar. I think a lot of us think about it in the same way. I mean, if we are followed, it depends on who is following us.
Following us.
And usually, whenever we say or whenever we are worried about the safety of women and all, when we think about it, who are we protecting women against, right? It's the men.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for bringing that in. I'd now like to go to Rajiv Ranjan. Uh, Rajiv, please tell us a little bit about Srijan and the work that you do around men and boys, and how do you engage the men and boys and the age group?
Yes, I'm Rajiv Ranjan Sinha. I work for Srijan Foundation. Srijan Foundation is a 20 years old grassroots level organization working in Jharkhand state. And probably you people have the understanding that Jharkhand, some part of it is totally tribal and forest and isolated areas. And our major aim is to work to create a better world for women and children. So as it suggests that our initial or major chunk of intervention was with women in, you can say that it was basically women empowerment program. And we worked with more than 60,000 adolescent girls, 10,000 women farmer building their identity as women farmer. And also we run gender resource center to address the issue of women violence and educating other, creating cadre of paralegal worker to address the issue of violence at the community level. To be very honest, almost like 6 years from now, we never had this idea of working with men. But we used directly, indirectly, we used to work with men and boys, because when we were mobilizing adolescent girls, we were organizing these Mahila groups, they were having resistance from the household level. And in some cases, we also noted or noticed cases of violence coming from these families. So we used to informally do counseling of these main groups, and the boys or brother of the adolescent girls to send their the women or the girl to meetings. And this is how the initial thought of working with men started. Some 6 years ago, we had a meeting of a small group of NGOs where we decided to work formally on a pilot basis with men and boys in 10 villages, which were very mixed in nature. And you know that this working with men is very much influenced by the background in which these men and boys comes. So minority community, the behavior and the culture uh, ask men to behave in a different manner. In tribal, they have a different behavior patterns, social norms which guide them. And in general, it has a very different behavior pattern of these boys. So the initial intervention was like with the thought that to create a pool of people, we call it responsible partner and caring father. With this bigger motto, we started working, and we had two groups. One was a boys group up to 18 years and men of 21 years. You can say where these 3 years gap. So actually, in some cases, the boys who are married. So if the boy is married, it will go to the married group. If it is not married, it will come to the boy group. So this is how we started working with them. We did a detailed, in-depth study to identify the package of intervention that we need to give to these men and boys. What are the hurdles, the social norms, the behaviors which restricts or prompt men and boy to behave in a certain manner? And based on those, you can say, bubbles, we started giving them started working with these men and boys. Uh, so initially, the biggest challenge was like mobilizing these men and boys in one place. And once they started coming together, so the changes started happening. We are not saying that we have been able to like completely change the men and boys. It is still the visible changes, the practical changes that has happened. Like they are giving support in terms of like sharing household level works, cleaning clothes, utensils, taking care of the children. But still the psyche or the attitude, the bigger strategic changes that needs to happen, it's a long way to go.
Uh, thank you, Rajiv. So what I'm hearing is that eventually organizations that have been working with girls decided that they need to work with men and boys because men and boys had an impact on the girl and women and girls lives, right? So also some interesting things that all of you said. One was, I heard Navneet say that they had never thought about working with men and boys, and that never even crossed their mind. And also, Anusha, you shared that we when a boy Sai sort of gave you a perspective about how boys and girls react differently and in a situation, and how that sort of changes our perspective. That's how you sort of started thinking about working on men and boys. So I think my next question is, one, why are we often late in starting to work with men and boys, right? Why is it that it takes us so much time? And second, when we do decide to work with men and boys, what is it that we focus on, or what is the starting point of working with men and boys? And any three of you, anyone who'd like to begin?
I think
I can.
Yes, yes, Anusha. Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we are one. I think because there is really an importance in working with the girls. I mean, there's no going away to say that we can only work with the boys. It's important to work with the boys, but the girls are really far left behind. So I think the starting point for many organizations is, how do we get even girls to some sort of like a level playing field to say, okay, your period doesn't need to completely change your life. There's so much that you can do after that natural and normal process as well. But I working with girls is the conversation is the empowerment, right? Like, how do we empower them, give them confidence and all of this? But working with the boys is actually a very reflective process. Okay, we're saying, hey, you have all of these privileges, patriarchy is supporting you, but really let's have a conversation and let's unravel to see, is patriarchy really supporting you? What are the roles that you are being boxed in, and really how is that impacting you? But at the same time, how is it impacting the girls? Let's look at the other side, right? So the whole conversation is extremely reflective, and if we don't do it right, it's very soon very easy to alienate them. I remember when I was in college, when I had the gender and development classes, it was such a disaster because it was about us versus them, women versus men. I don't think that's the conversation that we need to take, because very easily it can get there. So how do we have a conversation to say patriarchy affects us all, but how is it affecting the boys? What is it that you have to, do to, unravel that for yourself? But also, how do you support and become gender ambassadors? And that's when we have the conversations in the classroom, you can see our girls' camp is full of energy and just so exciting to be there. But our boys' camp, even though it's activity based, it's the same sort of curriculum we've built the program on. the mood in the whole camp becomes very reflective, because we want to see how you show them the mirror to say this is how it's affecting you, how can you be a gender ambassador. That's very much reflective about how things happen at home, what really is the role that gender plays with them. So I think that contrast sort of impedes organizations to quickly say, okay, let's work with the boys and men. I think it's always like an afterthought to say, I don't think they are also getting the information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anusha, Navneet, would you like to add? Navneet, Rajiv?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
So as Anusha said that, once you start focusing on girls, because the problem is so huge and it kind of, hits you starkly in your face. So you start focusing on, working with girls as we started. But soon we realized that even if you want to work with the girls for girls, then also it becomes necessary to work with boys or work with men. जैसे हमारा SHG का काम, we have like for last 20 years we are working with SHG women. But once these SHG women start coming out of their homes, they start attending the meetings, the resistance and backlash starts coming from homes. So that way, as Rajiv ji was also saying, that once these women start fixing problems in their households, their communities, then the reflection starts within the organization also, in our team also. कि भाई कैसे इसको manage करें? How to kind of facilitate this transformation of women from being confined to their homes or their fields to becoming the active part of the community. And that way you start the conversation with the men or with the boys, but that is not very structured in the sense, because let us accept that also we also have this constraint of once we start a project, then we are very project focused. तो एक बार प्रोजेक्ट में फोकस गर्ल्स का है, तो यू कांट सडनली स्टार्ट वर्किंग विद बॉयज, बिकॉज यू वुड रिक्वायर रिसोर्सेस, you would require the shift your energies to the working with boys. You would require the team, you need to train the team, and the resources are like limited. And once you divert that that resource to working with boys, so somehow you are compromising with the work that you are working with the girls. So you both maintaining that balance also becomes trickier for the organization if you are working in a project mode. So that also is one constraint. Otherwise, I think in most of the organizations which are working with women, this realization is there that only working with women is not going to solve the problem. क्योंकि SHG women के साथ में भी हम काम करते हैं, so sometimes we feel that okay, we have formed the SHGs, financial inclusion is happening, now we are kind of starting livelihood intervention with these women, now we are going with rights based intervention with these women. So sometimes we also feel that are we helping these women, or we are burdening them with more and more interventions, because then they need to divide their time within the household doing these taking care of these responsibilities. So we start feeling that okay, we should work with men even if we have to work for women. So that realization is there in the team. And coming back to our work with adolescent girls, this conversation happened most passionately in our girls empowerment team, which is like when we start working with girls, life skills pe kaam karte hain, then we start working on their education, their aspiration, they gain some confidence, they start speaking in the community, they start negotiating for their rights in the family. Then there also backlash starts from fathers, and most of the times from brothers also. So ये जो भाइयों से जो backlash start हुआ, that kind of set us on thinking more that we have to do something. क्योंकि भाइयों के साथ में डील करना तो अब मर्दों के साथ में तो हम इतने साल से कर ही रहे हैं, बट हाउ टू डील विद दिस बॉयज हु आर यंग बॉयज. लड़कियां बोल रही हैं कि भैया तो पढ़ने जाता है, मुझे साथ में ही नहीं ले जाता. So the question is, as Anusha was saying, it's not that they are just careers of patriarchy. They are victim also, in a way they are victim also. क्योंकि अगर अपने बहन को साथ में नहीं ले जा रहे हैं, so they fear that somehow they would appear more feminine if they are accompanying their sister, if they are helping their sister. So that way we thought that we should start this conversation with young boys, and that way we started working with boys. So वो realization team में है. Now we are kind of and recently we were discussing about future direction of our organization's future direction and 5-year kind of strategic plan. So we have started working with boys. लेकिन men के साथ में भी do we really need to work in a more structured manner? Like we have been working in the community, so we do interact with men, but there is no structured program as such to work with men. अभी कम्युनिटी में अवेयरनेस का ड्राइव किया कुछ और वहां पे चलो लड़कियों ने इवेंट किया लड़कों ने इवेंट किया सो दैट वे मेन काइंड ऑफ कनेक्ट विथ आवर प्रोग्राम बट देयर इज नो स्पेसिफिक प्लेटफॉर्म व्हिच इज गोइंग टू डील विथ मेन फोक्स है ना स्पेशली अराउंड द क्वेश्चन ऑफ जेंडर क्वेश्चन ऑफ पेट्रियार्की how does it affect women how does it affect them also so that conversation is really kind of happening at our level in Iptida.
Thank you अनुषा जी और आपने बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट कुछ पॉइंट्स बोले जैसे कि एक ये कि बॉयज के साथ काम करना जरूरी है क्योंकि बॉयज या मेन they are a part of women and girls ka lives, right? So they just say in the form of a brother, in the form of a father, and so on so forth. The other thing is that sessions with boys are very reflective. I'm very curious to understand why that difference is there between a session with girls and a session with boys. And the other thing, one thing that I wanted to also talk about is I personally, as someone who's working with men and boys and an organization that ICRW supports a lot of work on men and boys, I often struggle with the use of the term victim for boys, right? We feel a little uncomfortable in calling boys victims. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before that, I wanted to see if Rajiv had wanted to say something about my previous question.
Yeah, sure. Saptaji, the problem of women is more visible. They are more vulnerable. At the same time, organizing, mobilizing, sitting with them, talking with them is easier. They listen to you. So it provides you a platform where you intervene. Because of the vulnerability, the degree of vulnerability they are possessing is much higher and visible. So it's easier for organization to work with them. The problem started coming when these women become aware of their rights or start wanting to do something. So it's a kind of challenging the status of men. Men started beating, men started scolding them, abusing them to control their independence, their mobility, everything which the men have enjoyed. But one very important thing while we are working with men has to keep in mind that many times even men don't realize that patriarchy affects the men as well. It becomes a burden, the privilege becomes a burden on them. Like if a girl is going to college, the man has the responsibility to protect. But if the environment is friendly, conducive, and the girl can independently go to the college, the men or boys will have other things to do. Okay, so these kind of realization is very important. That is the responsibility of men and boys to create a better environment.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And what if a boy does not want to protect, right? What if a boy is not interested in protecting? He may not want to do anything else or not be productive in any other way, but he may just not be interested in protecting. Why should a boy or a man be the protector, right? And what does that do to a man and boy, that kind of expectation? So Anusha, coming back to you about your point on the different nature of these sessions, right, between girls and boys, what do you think is the reason? And I think I'd just also like to add a little bit, and then we can bring in Navneet and Rajiv also to respond, is that once you start working with men and boys, what is it? How do you change your gears? How do you get them to be involved? Rajiv ji just said that their issues are not very visible. They don't really listen. It's very hard to get across to men, especially on issues like this, because these are considered women's issues, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you make men a part of this process? How do you engage them and also tell them that, look, these privileges are a burden on you as well?
Okay, and I think great points you've noted from all our conversations. Yes, I think, when we talk, I think this is something that girls and women across the globe have in common, right? When we find something that is, a stigmatized topic that you're not supposed to talk about it, when we open up spaces for women, it literally comes forth, right? We want to share everything that we know. So when I tell a girl that, you're having a period is very natural and normal, she is not going to stop with herself. She's going to go out and tell more girls. I remember, I mean, there's this whole, I found this new cloth napkin and it's wonderful, and we don't want to just keep it to ourselves. We want to share it with somebody else, or the menstrual cup. This is something that just women and girls, we have that, unspoken sort of a thread that gets us together. So I think even in the camps you can reflect and see that, or even in fact in
That is
these
often
places.
called as gossip, though.
No, I think that's really the word that we really need to change, right? I think it is,
Sisterhood.
though we weave a tapestry of that, those threads of, okay, I connect to you. I know when you have your period, I know what you feel, I know what you, and so let's come together on this issue. So I think we have that unspoken. I will not use the word gossip, but some other word we need to come up with to say, we want to widen the circle of solidarity. That's really something that girls, know. So in the camps, or even in, in Imtada's talim shalas, we saw girls really are like, acha, aapko pata tha? I also want to know. You know something? Let me share it with you as well, right? So, but in the boys' camp, I feel that the starting point with the boys is always like, they know much more than the girls do, because most of them even have a cell phone, right? Even adolescent boys in most rural parts have a cell phone, and in a 10 rupee recharge they have the world at their feet, and mostly it is the wrong kind of information they have. Okay, 10 rupees ka recharge mein aapko koi bhi content milega, and it's filled with things like pornography. So when we think that boys know about, know all of this, they actually know it from a completely different and very sort of mainstream point of view. So it's really important to talk to them about unlearning all what they've learned through all these sources. So giving them important and healthy information is as much critical, because he's learning it from pornography, or his brother telling him about something about, how do you fall in love? You go uska dupatta खींचो और फिर आप उसका number लो, और फिर that's really not what we want to do, right? We want boys to learn that healthy information. So I think that conversation is difficult for organizations, and I'm going to say, even Navneet brought up a point to say, we don't know, as projects we know how to work with the girls. हमारा सारा करिकुलम गर्ल्स का पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से लिखा हुआ है. Suddenly you're saying you work with the boys, it's a completely different conversation, right? An empowerment conversation versus, hey, you have the privilege and that's not really privilege. That conversation is completely different. So adapting it to that is really, for organizations, it's a learning within our own way of working. I don't know if I answered your point, but Sapna, you must call me out if I haven't.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Anusha. Navneet, Rajiv, would you like to add to what Anusha just said about working with men and boys, and sort of that whole different strategies and
Uh, Definitely, working with men and boys require a completely different approach strategy. It's very important that you means when you are trying uh, to impart some kind of information, you will have to create some kind of environment where they are able to participate. I remember that in our 3 years of project intervention, I never seen more than 50% of men or boys participated, in spite of the fact that all curriculums or training sessions were very, very participatory, engaging number of tools for each of the activities, workload analysis, violence, everything means very participatory tools were used. But I've never seen that more than 50% of men or boys participated in the monthly sessions that we organized. So a kind of the orientation or the socialization which they have developed, it restricts them to open up, to participate, in spite of the fact that they are burden or it is affecting badly to men or boys, but it's very hard for them to accept that men can cry, or it's a burden. They can't, they require to help their wife. They need to participate in the household work. It's very difficult for them to accept in front of the men sitting in front of them. I have, because I've been part of the projects that for 3 years, 6 years. So I have number of stories to tell. एक छोटा सा एक स्पाउस का एक पिकनिक ऑर्गेनाइज किए थे, जिसमें हस्बैंड वाइफ दोनों लोग थे. तो उसमें वाइफ का सिर्फ ये कहना था कि मेरा हस्बैंड मेरे बगल में बैठता है और रोटी गूंथता है, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है, उसको कुछ नहीं करने का जरूरत है. और लड़का बोलता है कि मेरी वाइफ मुझसे अच्छे से बात करती है ना, जब हम उससे, मुझे ये अच्छा लगता है. और ये दोनों कपल जो है पिछले 1.5 सालों से उनके घर में डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का इशू था. तो ये जो स्पाउसल कम्युनिकेशन है, कम्युनिकेशन दोनों के बीच में एक दूसरे को समझना, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. इस तरीके से प्लेस्ड हो जाते हैं मेन एंड बॉयज को. इस सोसाइटी ने इतनी हायरार्की पे प्लेस किया हुआ है कि वो नीचे आके बात ही नहीं कर सकता, और ये ऊपर जाने से पूरे समाज को तकलीफ होने लगती है.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. I'll just translate the example you gave for some of our audience members. So basically, a man in a spousal picnic, the man said he's happy to just see his wife smile and talk to him nicely. And the woman said, it's just okay if my husband is sitting nice to me and weeding the, kneading the flour. I don't need anything else. But of course, this was a case of domestic violence. There's been domestic violence in the family for around 1.5 years, right? So Rajiv ji, thank you for making the point that, spousal communication is so important, but because of the whole thing of hierarchy and privilege, it's just very difficult to make men come down and for society to accept that women are climbing up, right? So that's a big gap. Navneet ji, would you like to add anything to this?
Sure. So working with boys, it's like very different, as all our, Anusha and Rajiv ji said, because we thought that, okay, now we are working with girls, we form, we have a safe space for girls, we collectivize them into girls resource centers. And okay, now since we have started working with boys, we are also going to form, a group of boys, we are going to call it Boys Club. But the similarity stops there. Because for girls, even coming to GRC is an escape from the drudgery of the household. क्योंकि बाकी जगहों पे तो restrictions है. Now this is like their own space where they are coming and they are talking with each other, they are singing, they are playing, and they are doing stuffs. But लड़कों के लिए तो these things are already available. These privileges that we see, they already are enjoying. They can they can visit anywhere in the village. They can play together. So suddenly that attraction is no longer there. So how to kind of engage them? So sports became a good way to kind of engage them. That is also not enough. So we have kind of started introducing a bit of content related to their careers, their aspirations, so that it matches with their aspiration, and also games. So that way, in terms of a strategy, we have been we have been experimenting since we have just started working with boys in last 6 months. So we are also kind of learning on the go. So these are the two things that we have kind of introduced in the program, or made it integral component of the program, so that we are able to engage boys in fruitful conversations related to gender equality and other complex topics that we are going to discuss with them. So in terms of strategy or program design, that is the change that we have done. And also the conversation. Typically girls are much more receptive to whatever you are kind of we have our facilitators who are working with them, and so they have, in terms of skill level also, since these facilitators have been working with girls for last 6-7 years, so they are now kind of adapt to using this curriculum. But our male facilitators we have our male facilitators who work with boys, so they find it sometimes difficult to engage boys in the conversation. So for instance, when we start talking about gender, we start with the the physical changes that you see in your body when you reach adolescent age. अब उस conversation में boys would giggle, they would start laughing in between the conversation. So that becomes a challenge for our facilitators. But they are managing. In some of the boys club, they get very encouraging responses, but sometimes they get disheartened also when boys are not listening, and they are kind of making fun with each other. So that the message that they are trying to convey, sometimes it gets lost. So that problem also is coming. So we are also learning on the way, and hopefully we would learn from the experiences that Anusha, Rajiv ji had, ECF has had. So this is how we are in terms of working with boys and kind of learning in terms of program design, in terms of strategizing, and also in terms of delivering the content or engaging boys.
Thank you. We've been talking a little bit about different strategies that it requires, we need to follow while engaging men and boys. And in the process, we've spoken about some challenges, right? We've spoken about the challenge that it's difficult for men to step down from their privileges. We've also spoken about the challenge that, look, it's very difficult to get men together. The question that Nalini is raising in the chat box about why is it difficult to collectivize men, and especially when it comes to issues like this, when they want to collectivize over other harmful masculinities, it's easier. But when it comes to get them together to question gender norms, it's quite challenging, right? So, and also Navneet ji, you mentioned about lack of funds, projects being focused on girls, and of course, girls are more vulnerable. So we need those resources there. So, how then does one start doing this work, and how then does one build upon the work that's been happening? And the other thing is that in the existing work that some of you are doing, what are some of the more challenges, some more challenges? And here I just also want to add one anecdote. All of us who've been working on issues of gender and who are feminists are often asked by people who are generally not in this field, who have heard the term feminism on social media and so on, and who are slightly afraid of the word feminist and feminism. They will say, I'm interested. I want to know the work that you guys do, but can you explain it to me in a non threatening manner? Or can you explain it to me in a non activist manner? I've often heard, I've had some young cousins come over to me and ask me, male cousins, that can you talk to me a little bit about feminism, but explain it to me in a non threatening manner? So there's this whole perception about feminism, about the work on gender inequality that men have also developed, right? It's a wrong perception, and it can be, we can have a discussion around that with men and boys, but that's also a challenge. I don't know if you would agree, because in a way men are also afraid of gender equality, if I can say that. So if you could respond a little bit about this, and also some of the more challenges, and what then can we do to overcome some of these challenges?
I'd like to actually, just zoom back a little bit and say, okay, why boys, we're not able to have this conversation, right? And when we started having focus group discussions and going into these classrooms, we really, realized that boys are being robbed of a whole range of emotions, right? And whether it is mainstream media or patriarchy or, role models for them at home, the only emotions that they can show is anger and happiness. And even if they're sad, it is anger. So there's a lot around, mard ko dard nahi hota hai, they cannot cry, and just like Rajiv and Navneet said, that they are not given a healthy range of emotion, and this is just the beginning, right? So this is how it starts in the house, to say, you're a boy, you cannot cry, you're a boy, you cannot, you're a boy, you cannot, so this sort of adds on to their own understanding. And how do we break it is when we do these sessions in the classroom, there's a lot of conversation about what happens what are these range of emotions that you're unable to feel, and why is it that you're not able to feel. We don't need to label it as patriarchy, feminism, nothing. Let's just look at what is it that you're not able to do, and why are you not able to do it? And if you are having all of these restrictions, let's look at what are the restrictions that girls have. So when it comes from their own point of view, they're open to say, yes, I've not been able to cry, and I felt really sad, and every time I was on verge of crying, I was ridiculed by my family, ridiculed, and that's not fair. And when he realizes it's not fair, and then you say, hey, what is it that you're not allowing your sister to do? And I remember this boy getting over saying, yes, I don't like that my sister is wearing a jeans pant. And then we say, look, now let's look at this question of why is it that you don't like her wearing a jeans pant? Is that a right expectation to have? Why do you think? And then it goes back again to, safety. Boys look at her a certain way, I don't want to. And then, the conversation of really, can we change that entirely, right? These boys are probably your friends. What happens when you stand at the corner of that road and whistle at that girl? What is that implication? So through a whole comic strip, we said, okay, you were standing at this end of the road, there were all of your friends, and you whistled. And what happened to that girl's story? How she went back, she had to drop out of school, and then she had to get married, and she had 2 children. And this boy only knows that, because of the peer pressure, he whistled at this girl. But what is really happening in the girl's life? Things like this really bring it to perspective to say, it is not just, peer pressure. And ye, hum bas aise hi whistle kar rahe the na, that's not it. But what really happens because of it? I think when you start looking at having the conversation with boys in this fashion, it really helps them open up to say, we need to change it. We need to become gender ambassadors. They are much more open to that conversation. Sapna, you're here?
I think we have lots of now. Anyways, taking forward what Anusha was saying, see, I think I am much more hopeful when it comes to the receptivity that boys have. When it comes to issues like, obviously they are not going to understand what feminism is, but I think innately they understand. They have that sense of equality. But once you complicate the conversation, they also start, their own prejudices start coming out. For instance, जब हम गांव में कुछ कर रहे हैं, we are conducting some recently we were doing these events, Girl Child Day, and so okay, everyone agreed that okay, girls should not be married at an early age, and they should be given the equal opportunity to in terms of education. But भाई बच्चे के कौन देखभाल करेगा? Who is going to take care of children? So then suddenly they go, no, that work is for women, because they are like, they are uniquely capable of taking care of the children. So then I asked, why do you think like that? Because men also can take care of the children. So that is true. But after some persuasion, they agreed that okay, men also can take care of the children, but not till 6 months. So till 6 months, the child is very delicate and they need the extra care that women give to her. So I said that okay, the women can take care of the children, but are you talking about the mother or you're talking about the family members also? Because even during these 6 months, their family members also take care of the children. So that taking care can also be kind of done by the men also. So then they start questioning their own beliefs. So it's about engaging them in these conversations. How adept are we in engaging boys in these conversations? I don't think we are at this stage, and we are also learning on the go, as I said. But I think they also understand that their own sisters or the girls in the villages, they also need to have these same facilities. And we also here we need to be careful that we need to sensitize them and not obviously very hostile patriarch to they should not turn into benevolent patriarch only, that okay, we are now the protector. So our effort is to turn them into helpful allies of the girls in the villages. जैसे अभी हम वहां पे बात कर रहे थे कि भाई what are you going to do? जैसे अनुषा ने एग्जांपल दिया कि if some 4-5 लड़के हैं जो कॉर्नर पे खड़े होके वो लड़कियों को घूर रहे हैं, they are making them uncomfortable. तो अभी हमारा महुआ खुर्द का एग्जांपल है, we set up boys club, we are starting engaging with boys and we engage them in the conversation that okay, which are the places in the villages where girls feel uncomfortable, and they instantly recognize that, okay, that is the place where, some boys stand, and then they kind of, they pass some remarks, or they look to girls in a particular way, and that makes girls uncomfortable. And they took the initiative, and they went and discussed with these, boys, and that thing stopped. Similarly, some of the boys in the conversation said that, okay, now they are going to talk with the, parents of some of the girls who are not sending their daughters to Ramgarh, which is like a nearby town where they can go to attend colleges. So that way we see that they see the value in equality, and we don't need to kind of, teach them, okay, complex theory of feminism, whether they are receptive to, the entire ideas of feminism. If they are fine with treating women with equality, we can say that, okay, now they have understood the innate, the meaning of feminism, but we need to be equally careful not to turn them into, benevolent patriarch, as I said. So that is the danger that I see. Sometimes we slip into, where, girls feel that, okay, they are now, since, girls are facing these problems in our villages, so they have kind of, they have to turn into a protector mode now. So that conversation that our team is also having with the, boys, that, okay, you have to support them, but the fight that, girls, they have to wage on their own with their families in the communities, we have to be their allies. So that's how we are kind of, dealing with these things.
Thank you. Thank you. Rajiv Ji, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is like respecting and recognizing the contribution of both the men and women and men both. But the real challenge is that whenever a woman or girl start demanding their rights, she is labeled as feminist, and the community or the society is not ready to accept that. So it's very important that this recognition of their work and whatever they are doing, and the division of work should not be like, uh, it should be work of both the people. It's not like this work is for men or women. When we start dividing the work, these kind of issues will start coming up, labeling of people as feminism, women as feminist.
Yes, and also, why are we so afraid of a woman who's a feminist, right? Or a man who's a feminist? That is also something that we must talk to men and boys about. What is so scary about giving up your privileges? What is so scary about having a partner that's equal, having a friend or having a sister who wants her rights as much as you want to exercise yours, right? Uh, I
It's
think
demanding control. That is the threat. It
it is
it asks for losing of control, come down from the egoist,
exactly.
the patriarchy
Yes.
that has come to the head of men, even
Yes.
women.
Uh, Before opening up to the audience questions, and we have quite a few interesting questions, I just want to ask one last question. We've spoken some bit about strategies, challenges. We've spoken about the importance of involving men and boys and some of the ways of doing it. But what has been some of the impact of working with men and boys in all the work that you do at Ibtida, at Srijan, and at Voice for Girls? What has been the impact on the lives of women and girls, on the lives of boys, on the lives of boys as allies, or on the lives of boys as boys, right? There's also often this struggle that, do you work with boys for the sake of boys and men, because that ultimately will lead to gender equality anyways, or do you work with um, men and boys for to be allies, right? So I think we'll hand over to Anusha because she has to go. She has a small infant who needs her care. So Anusha, if you could start and if you could just respond in terms of impact. And also, there are a few audience questions around why is it so difficult for men to collaborate? What are some of the strategies that you use in training sessions and so on? So if any of the questions that you'd like to take, please.
I think when we built the curriculum, Sapna, it was a lot around what is the mission and vision of the organization. It is very much to say adolescent girls need to be empowered, and we still keep that as a core, purpose of the program. But when we started working with the boys, I think we kept that mission and vision going to say, yes, while we work with the boys also, why do we want to do it? We want to do it because when we want communities to be safe for our girls. So yes, we are saying, boys don't get this information, boys don't have a safe space, boys also require this sort of, conversations, very important, healthy conversation. So we are, open to saying, let's talk to boys about their changing bodies. Let's talk to boys about sexual reproductive health or gender or identity and patriarchy and all of this. And it's a lot of value in it, right? But at the same time, whenever we do the curriculum, while we get that buy-in, and it goes back to what Nalini was saying in the chat box to say, well, you need a buy-in. Of course, we need a buy-in because otherwise, the conversation becomes us versus them, and you're going to alienate them instead of bringing them as allies. So we really need to say, hey, it's affecting you. But when we have the buy-in, we're going to say, but things are really bad for other genders. I'm not only saying women. I mean, if you're a third gender, you're even facing it in so many other ways which marginalizes them further. So while this is affecting you as boys, and if you identify as boys, what is happening to the other gender and what is happening to women? I mean, it's really whether it is violence against women or opportunities, or even this whole idea of, do I need protection, what clothes do I wear? So when we do an activity, and I'm going to talk about this one activity we do, we say, okay, today you got up and you're this girl, and we take her through, take this boy who's now portraying the girl's life, about all the questions she's asked from the time she gets up to, why are you getting up so late? You're a girl. Why are you wearing this dress? Her brother has to go drop her. Her college professor is probably behaving inappropriately to you, and then she comes back after dark, and then all of this, and then suddenly the boys in the classroom say, this is exactly my sister's life. And when you put it in that way, it sort of says that now I'm portraying this girl's life and I feel so boxed in and I really want to break free. And this was just 1 hour of activity in the classroom. Imagine the girl's life. I think that buy-in was important for them to start having the conversation, and that 1 hour and that one activity, they realized, well, I really want to change that in my community, right? So I think that's how we need to start having these conversations. It's important that we don't lose the focus. If we are an organization that's working for women empowerment, working for girls' rights, however, extending it must ensure that we're still keeping that focus in mind. And so when we bring the conversation, it's about how do you become an ally for my girls. And I think that's central to the work that we do with the boys.
Thank you. Thank you. Navneet ji, Rajiv ji.
Regarding like the impact that you're saying, I said in the beginning that the impact are very immediate, but I have some statements in terms of showing impacts, how many lives have been changed. Statements like one boy said, now I don't follow my sister when she goes out. I don't check her mobile when she is calling someone. I don't listen to her conversation. I have no problem buying a hygiene kit for her. My husband's talk to when he goes out, he tells me where he is going. So these kind of a statement, which shows that now the changes are happening. I think these are though very small statements, but it certainly has created a kind of harmony within the family. It has like helped men and boys to understand the situation and the issues which are affecting them in the society, the practices, the social norms that are affecting the life of women and girls.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv ji. Yes, of course, there are so many such stories from the field where we work with men and boys, and they tell us that, nobody has ever spoken to us about these aspects and so on and so forth. But the unfortunate reality is also that organizations that work on gender norms are often asked, okay, demonstrate your impact, demonstrate your impact. And 3-4 anecdotes or sentences will not do. So that also brings us to another question, and which I think may be covered in subsequent panels.
is that when you're doing work on gender norms, how do you actually measure outcome? How do you measure impact? How do you track, right? Because from the program's perspective, every boy who's saying something like this has been impacted, and in the future may turn out to be different than what he would have if he had not undergone the program, right? So that's one question that stands before all of us in terms of how do you exactly really measure impact, right? Navneet ji, do you want to add about your impact, Ibtida's work, and impact on boys?
Mm, mm. So since we have really started very recently, so in terms of impact, what we are doing is we are using ECFS baseline survey that they do. We call it GAS, gender attitude survey. So that's what we have kind of implemented in terms of capturing the initial stage, or what is the current attitudinal in terms of the gender equitable attitude, the kind of gender equitable attitude that boys have in terms of baseline study. And we do intend to measure the impact of once the curriculum is over. But I don't think any, obviously we need these kind of structured studies to really present our work, and also the capture the changes that are being made in terms of really quantifying it. But we really can't capture some changes which are happening at the ground. For instance, कल हमारा क्रिकेट मैच हो रहा था लड़कियों के बीच में. We conducted and that was the first time that girls played in that particular village cricket match, right? And boys from the boys club were also involved in terms of organizing and the entire arrangement things, including the girls, along with the girls. And after match happened, we had a discussion with boys. And मैंने बोला कि भाई क्या इससे क्या लड़कियों को मैच देख के क्या लग रहा है तुम्हें, क्या पता चल रहा है? तो मैंने बोला कि they started saying that they were hitting 4s and 6s, चौका छक्का लगा रही थी, तो हमें तो विश्वास ही नहीं हो रहा था कि लड़कियां भी चौका छक्का लगा सकती है. So these are small little things that really changes their attitude in terms of the gender, the very entrenched gender roles that they have in their mind of what a girl can do, what she cannot do, right? And these are the shifts that are happening. So we need to evolve, or we need to make our the tools also very sophisticated to capture these kind of changes. So this is how we see. But ठीक है, anecdotal है तो ठीक है, हमें तो we can, ठीक है, there are many anecdotes, many small stories, and probably collectively this would make a compelling story. This is how we are looking at it as of now.
Yes, absolutely. And anecdotal evidence and qualitative research is very important to understand impact, because often the nuances of impact gets lost in quantitative research, right? So I think we have 15 more minutes, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the audience questions. One of the questions was raised by Nalini, who talks about, the difficulty in collectivization, bringing men together as collectives, like Rajiv ji was also saying. Why is it that it's so difficult to get men together as collectives? Of course, they are working and they have that pressure of being bread earners, and they perhaps don't have time for activities like this. But why is it that it's easier to bring together a group of women on issues and not men? Well, and then there was a comment by an audience member who said that, but when it comes to harmful practices, men do come together. So how does one explain this irony?
So probably, I would slightly disagree with this kind of assertions, because prior to before I started working with Ibtida, I have worked in Bihar with AKRSPI, Khan Rural Support Program India, and there we used to really make a collective of farmers, and they used to be men only. कभी कभी हमारा जो प्रोग्राम का स्ट्रक्चर होता है, that also decides whether we are engaging with men in a very structured manner or not. there we used to conduct our meetings in the, after 6, after 7, when they used to come back from their, fields. So these kind of, small changes in the program design, and also the commitment our own people have of really going to the field. रात में हम वहाँ पे सोलर लैंप लगा के हम लोग मीटिंग कर रहे हैं रात में 8 बजे तक. तो वहां तो काफी भीड़ इकट्ठा हो रही है. हमारे जो किसान विकास समिति, we used to call it, and there used to be huge response in terms of their engagement. तो मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ा अगर हम लोग थोड़ा इमेजिनेटिव होके इनोवेटिव तरीके से उनको जोड़ने की कोशिश करें, तो कलेक्टिवाइजिंग, आई डोंट थिंक दैट इज वो चैलेंज रहेगा. दैट इज नॉट एज इजी एज मेकिंग एसएचजी, विमेन एसएचजी. लेकिन वो तो हम लोग बैरियर पार कर सकते हैं वंस दे सी द वैल्यू इन टर्म्स ऑफ द एक्चुअल मटेरियल बेनिफिट दैट दे आर गेटिंग आउट ऑफ दिस काइंड ऑफ कलेक्टिवाइजेशन और दीज ग्रुप्स. बट मुझे लगता है कि नेक्स्ट ऑर्डर का प्रॉब्लम ये है, एंड दैट वी आर नॉट रियली हैविंग दैट कॉन्वर्सेशन, दैट ओके वी आर हैविंग दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन रिलेटेड टू जेंडर एंड पेट्रियार्की विद गर्ल्स, with women, with boys also. But are we really having these conversations with men in very structured manner on a platform? एक कम्युनिटी में कुछ इवेंट किया हमने, कुछ सेंसिटाइजेशन का प्रोग्राम किया, that is a different thing. But really giving these men a platform where they can discuss these issues related to the discrimination that women are facing, what they can do, we have been talking about men also being victim of patriarchy. बट कोई प्लेटफॉर्म है क्या जहां पे कि वो अपनी बात रख सकें? तो मुझे लगता है कि इवन मेन, एंड वी हैव इन्यूमरेबल एग्जांपल्स ऑफ सपोर्टिव मेन, बट दे रियली डोंट हैव एनी प्लेटफॉर्म वेयर दे गेट इनकरेज्ड बिकॉज ऑफ देयर ओन बिहेवियर. जो एसएचजी वीमेन होती हैं, ऑब्वियसली ये रेजिस्टेंस होता है, बैकलेस होता है, बट यू हैव innumerable stories of very supportive family members, very supportive husbands, very supportive brothers जो कि साथ देते हैं उनका. लेकिन उनके लिए कोई प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं है. मे बी दे आर फेसिंग रिडिक्यूल फ्रॉम देयर ओन पीयर ग्रुप, क्योंकि भाई वो चलो ठीक है, ये तो औरतों के पीछे ही लगा रहता है, ये तो बहनों के साथ में ही रहता है, ये तो बीवी के पीछे है, वो तो बीवी को छोड़ने जाता है, उसको लाने जाता है मीटिंगों में जब हम वी कंडक्ट ट्रेनिंग्स. सो वी रियली नीड टू हैव वो ग्रेजुएट इन टर्म्स ऑफ आवर ओन लर्निंग्स ऑफ रियली एंगेजिंग मेन इन अ वेरी स्ट्रक्चर्ड मैनर. तो वो मुझे लगता है कि ये बीच का थोड़ा मामला है. इट्स नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट टू कलेक्टिवाइज मेन, बट रियली कलेक्टिवाइजिंग फॉर व्हाट? इफ दे सी द मटेरियल बेनिफिट, दे वुड कम टुगेदर, है ना. प्रोग्राम में चेंज करके आप कलेक्टिवाइज कर सकते हैं, बट फ्रूटफुली जेंडर ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव रोल्स के लिए क्या हम उनको तैयार कर पा रहे हैं क्या? दैट आई थिंक वी नीड टू pilot some things, we need to innovate, and we really need to do things at the ground to really come to improve our own understanding of working with men.
Thank you.
It goes back to
Look,
what Navneet was saying, right? It goes back to which is the age, and a lot of comments even in the chat box. कौन से age से हम शुरू करें लड़कों के साथ काम करना, और what is that age? I think there is really need to go at a very young age, because this man sees a material benefit, so hence he's supporting this wife to go. Is the stage we are in at actually right now, or even in our own circles, right? How we celebrate a man who takes care of his child at home, where women are taking care of children and working and everything at the same time. There is no celebration of her in that sense, right? So how do we not celebrate something that is supposed to be a responsibility, and actually take a step back to say you have a responsibility in this is your own child and you're taking care of your own child, so you don't have to hear saying wow, you gotta have a supportive husband because he's taking care of his of your child while you're working. And so how do we go away from this notional celebration or giving that space for feminist men in that sense, but actually go back to say, it is something that is a given, it has to become a given, and how do we make that role? So maybe we have to really start early with our boys in that sense. In fact, I have this big problem with this book called The Rebel Stories for Girls, and I keep saying, it's full of collection of these beautiful stories of women leaders. I would say it should be the rebel stories for children. Why should we say rebel stories for girls? Because unfortunately, again, we're saying, only girls should get role models of women. Why can't boys have a whole book of women who are leaders in their own space? And why can't we give that to our boys as well, right? So how do we say we have rebel stories for children, and children learn I mean, we are okay with, girls saying Gandhiji is my hero or Nehruji is my hero or whatever, but we are not okay when a boy says, Mitali Raj, who's a cricket captain, is my hero. Why? Why not? Right? So
Yeah,
how do we make it a commonplace?
true, true. Also, there was a question on how do girls react to vulnerabilities of men and boys? Like we heard even during the course of the panel, and audience members have also written that men are also burdened by patriarchy. So how do women and girls respond, like in programs? How do they respond when we talk about engaging men and boys, and talking about the fact that patriarchy is harmful for men too?
Think we are cut off the same block, right? So I don't know if suddenly women will say, no, you have to teach them how to take care of babies. Of course, they're going to say that, no, it is our role. And yes, we should go out and do anything we want, but we have a role and we should play that role. So she's not going to suddenly flip and say, no, I'm not going to do it, and we all have to share. So, in fact, when we go into the classrooms that we work with the girls and say, boys, we are working with the boys and we're teaching them about how you get periods, how girls get a period, the first, few minutes of that conversation is super uncomfortable because they're like, Chichi Akka, how can you do that? You should not be talking to the boys. Why should they know about it? And how do you have that conversation that yes, they need to know about it because they know about girls and women's bodies as much as they know about what's happening, and it's a normal and natural thing, right, to know about and to explore these concepts. So having that conversation itself is difficult. So I don't think we can suddenly just flip that switch and say, okay, humne kar diya. It's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Also, Ji Rajiv ji.
See, Anusa is very correct. Like they have groomed in the society where they have learned that they are supposed to play certain roles. And suddenly talking about those role change, it's not that easy, even with the wife or the sisters, with their whom's family we are talking about. So initial reaction is no, 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 what the society will say. No, the man is supposed to behave in a manly way, must, so it should not be harmed. So the roles are so deep rooted in the society that it's very hard to break. The acceptance comes very is very hard to come.
And
Yes.
Sapna, and this is a work in progress. I mean, why to talk about boys? Let us talk about ourselves only, है ना? So हमारे अंदर ही इतने सारे prejudices हैं कि even if we, we pride ourselves in calling ourselves feminist men, but this is always like a work in progress. So I am fortunate to have a very, a feminist partner who keeps reminding me of my own prejudices. We are so deep rooted and entrenched that it comes out, है ना? तो धीरे धीरे बदलाव तो होगा, एंड धीरे धीरे ये चीजें जाएंगी, मुझे लगता है कि
जी जी। और आई थिंक लास्ट 2 सवाल ये थे। एक सवाल ये था कि एंट्री पॉइंट क्या है, कितने एज में हमें स्टार्ट करना चाहिए काम करना, या क्या यंगर बॉयज के साथ काम करना चाहिए? दूसरा ये कि redefine strength ko, how do you redefine strength? Because often when you start working with men and they start exhibiting feminine characteristics, they are considered weak, or feminine characteristics are considered weak, or gender equal men are considered biwi ke gulam, and so on. So how do you redefine it, right? And I think finally a very important question by Hemlata around look, there is increasing nationalism now, there is increasing communalism, and there is so much disruption of the work that civil society is doing on collectives, it's doing on gender norms and so on and so forth. So how does this communal nationalistic sort of narrative impact the work that we are doing with boys and men, right? And also to bring in, I think one mistake that perhaps we've been doing in this panel is talking in binaries. What about bringing in questions of the fact that men are not homogenized, right? And also it's not just about men and women, it's about all genders, and it's about the fact that no gender is homogeneous. So these three questions, if each one of you could take one, because we're a little short of time. So anyone who'd like to take the question on entry points, when can we start? Or when should we start?
I think the early we start interacting with children or boys is better. Not like it has to come from one's house. When within our houses we start treating men, girl child and boy child differently. It starts from there. So from our houses we start to like intervene in. Then we can see the changes, and we can have a true man or true boy in the sense.
So, but what about, suppose we cannot start very early? Suppose we have to work with men, because we've missed out on a large chunk of men who are not children and adolescents anymore. What do you do then?
Usually, being a practitioner, I can say that the acceptability among the teenagers are much higher. Like when you start working with boys of 13, 14 years, they recognize the fact very early. They learn about gender equity, or sharing the work with their sister is more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if it's
So
at the
begin
point
from
that
the household.
we can't, Shweta, Sapna, just to say that where we are unable to work with the men is because the conversation is much more difficult. I think we should enable the children to have the conversation with the family members, right? At the end of the day, if a girl goes and tells her mother how to use a sanitary napkin, she's going to accept that much better than we trying to convince a woman why she should go away from using, say, other menstrual hygiene methods which are unsafe for her. So in that sense, I think it's really important for us to start knowing how children can inform their parents about this. And it's a very successful strategy that is used, in many, many contexts, right? And also, I think when it comes to like really, let's have the conversation about strength, because men who are supporting equality are looked at as weaker. Of course, there's a lot of peer pressure to uphold patriarchy, and I must say, patriarchy is as much women, right? There are patriarchal women and there are feminist men, and they are all shades in that paradigm, right? So the one of the ways that we do it in the classroom is really box what is strength, right? And when we start off by saying, who's a strong person, it's a very physical attribute, a strong hero, and we take it from there. And then we say, okay, do you have any inner strengths, and really what are the inner strengths? And then kids actually talk about, we should have equality, we should be kind. And then we say, okay, are these only qualities that boys have or girls have? And then you open up to say, strength can be in different forms. Strength can be in accepting that we are wrong, and how do we change that conversation about, yes, when I was standing in that corner and I was whistling, I did something wrong, the law says I'm wrong, it is impacting girls, and it is violence, and let's name it as violence, not just say eve teasing, right? It is sexual harassment. Let's name it, let's give it the name that it is, and have a conversation there. And I would say there's no age to start it, because if we don't do it, then the media is doing it, or internet is doing it. So we already, children are being informed about gender. So if we don't do it, they're going to learn it the wrong way.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last question about increasing nationalism, communalism, celebrating hyper masculinity. How is that impacting the work that we are doing on men and boys? And there's this whole narrative about being,
Yeah.
hyper
Yes.
nationalistic.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. I think we've regressed. I think the last few years we've regressed in terms of progress that we made on girls and women, and then the pandemic has really reset us by several decades. And I think this is a good time for us to understand how we really just doing cosmetic sort of information giving to the girls and boys, or do we need to really do more? Should we just talk about gender equality, or should we start with equality and talk about gender equality? I think all of these questions are there right now in front of us, because end of the pandemic, there's going to be so much lash out on girls and women, that the progress is really recent.
Navneet ji, you wanted to add something.
Yes, I think I really have not really engaged with boys about these themes. But we can say that, the current environment, when, hyper nationalistic environment and masculinity really combines, and that makes our work much more difficult. Because once we are talking about masculinity, once we are talking about the definition of a true mard, and when we are going to have these conversations, then in boys are going to have this, ideal image of a real mard, and that really combines with someone, who is able to, जो पाकिस्तान को मजा चखा दे, है ना, and those who can teach.
Sorry, you're breaking out. Sorry. Navneet ji? Okay, I think we're having some trouble with Navneet ji. Yes, so this, we all must be alert to the fact that this hyper nationalism and a nationalistic narrative is also impacting the work that we are doing, and it is setting us back, right? Thank you, Hemlata, for raising that very important question. And I want to end on a positive note. There was one question on how does gender equality benefit men and boys? How does a gender equitable society, what do men gain from a gender equitable society? So, last closing remarks on that.
So this is interesting when we do this conversation about, protecting girls in classroom with boys. And at the end of the conversation, we say, what does it mean when you're protecting? When you have to go at 8 o'clock and pick up your sister and drop her, what does it mean? And boys start noticing that, it means that there is so much burden in them being the Salman Khan in the house and realizing they don't want to be Salman Khan in the house. So I think gender equality is just that, to say, it is something that is impacting them. It is a role that is being forced upon them by society as much as so many other expectations from the girls. And how do we step back from that and say, ye nahi karna hai? Gender equality means that you and I have equal freedom, and how do we live that life together? To not be Salman Khan, basically.
Rajiv ji? Rajiv ji?
I'm really sorry. I think my connection was poor and I
No problem.
dropped out.
We're just coming back to you, Navneet ji.
No, it's okay.
It's true that it's very important that to make men and boys realize that patriarchy, at one hand, when it provides you with some privileges, it becomes a burden. It becomes a compulsion. It forces you to behave in a certain manner, which sometimes becomes so heavy that they are not able to carry that load in themselves. So obviously it affects men as well very negatively at times.
Yes, thank you. Navneet ji, the last question was, and closing remarks was, that how does a gender equitable society benefit men and boys? What do they stand to gain from it?
There's so much to say. The patriarchy places such a burden on them, and girls and women are also realizing this. हम जब बात करते हैं लड़कियों से, so once we start discussing about the gender norms that are affecting them, patriarchy affecting them, but once we start discussing them, how are these affecting men also? Okay, these are the things that they are benefiting. You are easily, they give 15-20 things that how men are benefiting from patriarchy. But once we engage them, I'm talking about girls, not even boys. I'm talking about girls. And I have very beautiful example when a girl said that मेरे भाई को बॉम्बे जाना पड़ा काम करने के लिए क्योंकि उसको काम करना था. तो ये जो अर्निंग है, अर्निंग मेंबर जो है वो मेन ही होना चाहिए. The earning member has to be the men from the family. And she said that it's not that he has to earn. He has to earn in any case. कहीं भी रहेगा तो काम तो करना ही पड़ेगा. But then he has to go away from the family. He has to go away from the family to take care of his own livelihood and take care of the livelihood of the family also. Whereas women are not allowed to, not supposed to, they don't go, So this is how I think, men are also going to benefit if we are able to even make a slight change in, in terms of making a more equitable society where men and women are treated equally. And obviously this masculinity places such a huge demands on men to behave in a particular way. So even if we are able to change the masculinity aspect of it, that how a real men are supposed to be, that in itself would, release so much creativity. भाई गाना नहीं गा सकते आप, मतलब आप हंस नहीं सकते, आप रो नहीं सकते. So I think there is so much of repressed creativity inside men, which would be released if we are able to change these notions of, gender society, how a men should be, patriarchy कैसे affect कर रही है इन चीजों को. I think there are many, such ways in which this is going to benefit men and boys. And
Thank you.
obviously this is
Thank
going
you.
to be much more receptive society for women.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anusha, Rajiv, and Navneet, for sharing your thoughts and for helping us understand a little bit better what it means to work with men and boys and why we need to work with men and boys, and the challenges and the impact and the things that we need to keep in mind. I think before handing off to Swarna, I just want to share a few things and also about our work on men and masculinities. And I just want to say that one of the biggest challenges of when we work on men and boys is that, when we start talking about masculinity, men start thinking that, oh, look, we are victims. Oh, look, finally somebody is talking to us. Oh, look, now somebody is hearing us. And to bring them back from that point, to talk about the fact that, look, you're very privileged, you have a lot of power, and sorry. So, to bring them from that point where they start feeling very victimized is a big challenge. And I think that's one thing that we have to be very careful about, because I also read a few comments on the chat which said that, look, it's not just about women, men also need to be heard. I think we have to be very careful when we talk about men also need to be heard, because we have to talk about the burdens, we have to talk about the dabaf that patriarchy puts on them, but we have to constantly remind them of their privileges, because otherwise this can really backfire. So that's just one note that I wanted to end on. Over to you, Swarna. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm actually a little speechless because this is such an engaging, such a power-packed, such a solid discussion. I think we're all going to be thinking about the things you've said, the things we've heard, the way they apply to what we are doing now, what we might do in the future. I cannot thank ECF enough for reaching out to us to see if we would like to be a part of this. I think it's going to be a great learning for us going through these 3 weeks. And each one of you, Anusha, Navneet, Rajiv, I mean, what wealth you have brought to our understanding of these questions, which quite frankly, I have not engaged with more than superficially till now. Now you've got me thinking all over again about the things that I thought were impossible. Sapna, you're an amazing facilitator, and we're going to adopt you for future programs. So I'm delighted to have met you all through this medium. Anusha I met before, of course. Thank you, everybody who participated. We had 100 people, and Prajna is small enough that for us, this is actually quite miraculous. Not only were you here, you actually engaged, you chatted, you reacted, and I think that's going to be a very important part of the record for us as well. So I cannot thank you enough. Please come again and let's do something together. Reminder, there are upcoming panels in this series. Next week, we talk about the nuts and bolts of working with men and boys. We have people from 3 NGOs that already do this work, much as the ones here today, but with maybe a few more years behind them. The registration link and the FB event link are in the chat. The third week on February 12th, the panel is a panel of funders talking about some of the issues that you brought up earlier regarding measurement, evaluation, how do you assess what we've done, but also the sorts of logics that surround the support for this work. So we hope you'll stay with us through the 3 weeks, and that we will then also build a community for this, for thinking about this and for doing this work. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.